you fascinated by the paranormal, mysterious events? Do you believe that there is more to this world than what meets the eye? If so, you're in the right place. In this video, we'll be exploring 7 real-life stories of spirits and dark magic. From cursed talismans to voodoo queens, these stories will make you question everything you thought you knew about the supernatural. So sit back, grab some popcorn, and get ready to be spooked. The Voodoo Queen of New Orleans. In the early 20th century, a woman named Marie Laveau gained fame as the Voodoo Queen of New Orleans. She was a powerful practitioner of voodoo and became known for her abilities to heal, cast spells, and communicate with the dead. Legend has it that one of Laveau's most famous acts of black magic involved a man named Jacques Paris. Paris was a free man of color who disappeared in 1801, and his body was never found. Some people claim that he had been killed and used as a sacrifice in one of Laveau's voodoo rituals. Years later, a man named Christophe Glapion claimed that he was the reincarnation of Jacques Paris. He told a story about how Laveau had cursed him with a spell that caused him to die and then be reborn. Glapion became a prominent member of the New Orleans community and was known for his psychic abilities. Some people believe that his abilities were a result of Laveau's spell, and the story of Jacques Paris became a popular tale in New Orleans folklore. While it's difficult to know the truth behind the story, the legend of Marie Laveau and her powerful voodoo magic continues to captivate people's imaginations today. The Curse of the Talisman, summoning demons and death with black magic. In the early 1900s, a man named Aleister Crowley, also known as the Great Beast, gained notoriety for his involvement in the occult and black magic. He was known for his wild lifestyle and extreme beliefs, and he claimed to have supernatural powers. One of Crowley's most famous rituals involved the creation of a talisman, which he believed would bring him wealth and power. He performed the ritual on the Isle of Man with a group of followers, and they claimed to have summoned a demon to assist them. Shortly after the ritual, strange things started happening to the members of the group. One of them died under mysterious circumstances, and others reported experiencing supernatural phenomena. Many people attributed these occurrences to the Curse of the Talisman, and the story became widely known as the Curse of the Talisman. Although it's unclear whether the events were truly caused by a curse or simply coincidental, the story has become a well-known example of the dangers of dabbling in black magic and the occult. Helter Skelter, the chilling cult of Charles Manson. In the late 1960s, a man named Charles Manson became infamous for leading a cult that committed a series of brutal murders. Manson was known for his charismatic personality and his ability to manipulate his followers using drugs and black magic. One of the most chilling aspects of Manson's cult was their belief in a coming race war, which they called Helter Skelter. Manson believed that he and his followers would emerge as the rulers of the world after the war, and he used his powers of persuasion to convince them to commit violent acts in preparation. In August of 1969, Manson ordered his followers to carry out a series of murders, including the famous killing of actress Sharon Tate and 4 others at her home in Beverly Hills. The killings were brutal and senseless, and they shocked the nation. Manson and his followers were eventually caught and tried for their crimes. Manson was found guilty of multiple counts of murder and sentenced to life in prison, where he remained until his death in 2017. The story of Charles Manson and his cult is a haunting reminder of the dangers of charismatic leaders and the power of black magic to manipulate and control people's minds. The Curse of Goody Glover. In the 17th century, a woman named Goody Glover was accused of practicing witchcraft in the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Glover was a poor Irish immigrant who worked as a domestic servant, and she was known for her eccentric behavior and her use of traditional Irish healing methods. After a group of young girls accused her of casting spells and causing them to have fits, Glover was arrested and brought to trial. She was found guilty of witchcraft and sentenced to be hanged. Before her execution, Glover proclaimed her innocence and cursed the people who had condemned her. She predicted that they would suffer for their actions, and she warned that her spirit would haunt them for generations to come. In the years that followed, many of the people involved in Glover's trial and execution experienced misfortunes and tragedies. Some of them died under mysterious circumstances, and others suffered from illness and financial ruin. The story of Goody Glover is a reminder of the dark history of witch hunts and the dangers of superstition and fear. It's also a cautionary tale about the power of curses and the long-lasting effects of injustice. Whispers from the Witch's House. In the early 20th century, a woman named Mary Worth became the subject of a popular urban legend. According to the legend, Worth was a witch who lived in a house on the outskirts of town. She was said to have made a pact with the devil and had the power to curse anyone who crossed her path. One day, a group of teenagers decided to test the legend by going to Worth's house and calling out her name. As they stood outside the house, they heard a strange whispering voice that seemed to be coming from nowhere. Suddenly, they saw a figure in the window, and they ran away in fear. After that night, the teenagers began to experience strange and terrifying events. They heard voices calling their names and saw ghostly apparitions. They became convinced that they had been cursed by Mary Worth and that they were doomed to a terrible fate. The legend of Mary Worth continues to be passed down through generations, and many people still believe that her spirit haunts the house where she supposedly lived. While it's unclear whether Mary Worth was a real person or simply a product of folklore, the story serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of dabbling in the supernatural and the power of belief to shape our perceptions of reality. The legend of the Bell Witch. In the early 19th century, a man named John Bell lived with his family in a house in Adams, Tennessee. The family began to experience strange and frightening events, such as unexplained noises and objects moving on their own. They also heard a strange voice that seemed to be coming from nowhere. As the events became more frequent and intense, the Bell family became convinced that they were being haunted by a malevolent spirit. They consulted with a local witch named Kate Batts, who claimed to have put a curse on John Bell. The haunting continued for years, and the Bell family became increasingly isolated and afraid. The strange voice that they heard became more and more distinct, and it eventually identified itself as the spirit of a man named Kate Batts Witch. The spirit claimed that it had been sent to torment John Bell and his family, and it often spoke in a taunting and menacing tone. The family tried to ignore the spirit and even held a seance to try to communicate with it, but the haunting continued. John Bell eventually died, and the spirit claimed responsibility for his death. It then announced that it would leave the Bell family alone, but it warned that it would return in 7 years. To this day, the legend of the Bell Witch continues to fascinate and terrify people. While it's unclear whether the haunting was real or simply a product of folklore, the story serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of dabbling in the supernatural and the power of belief to shape our perceptions of reality. The chilling words of Lavinia Fisher. In the late 19th century, a woman named Lavinia Fisher became known as America's first female serial killer. Fisher and her husband John ran a boarding house in Charleston, South Carolina, and they were known for their hospitality and charm.